is telling me why it's compared to a gun at all in the first place. The cell is going to do what? Fires or it doesn't. There is no in between. It's like when you pull a trigger on a gun, the bullet is fired. You don't get to pull the trigger and then say, oh no, wait, let me take that back. All right? The cell fires or it doesn't. It has been stimulated enough to fire or it won't fire at all. It's going to stay at rest. But why else do we compare it to a gun?
Because even if you pull the trigger harder, it won't do anything.
All right? It doesn't matter how hard you pull the trigger on the gun. Once the trigger has been activated, what happens?
Fire.
Bullet fires. All right? Once the stimulation, the threshold for stimulation has been reached, the cell is going to fire. Simple short answer question. Those are the two parts that I want to see addressed. First of all, the cell fires or it doesn't. And second of all, the strength of the stimulus does not affect the speed of the transmission. Right? That action potential travels at the same speed. It does not matter how strong the stimulus is. Just like the bullet travels at the same speed, it doesn't matter how hard you pull that trigger or not. Right? Describe the reflex and pain arcs. I went over this the other day as much as I could. Again, what I'm looking for here is how do the messages travel within the nervous system? What parts of the nervous system are involved? What parts are involved? Where does the message come in from? Sensory neurons, right? And they send the message where in the body? To motor neurons. But how do they connect to motor neurons? Where in the body? The interneurons in the spinal cord. Is the brain involved here? No. So when you define the reflex and pain arcs, you are talking about what kind of a movement here? It's an involuntary response of the body, an involuntary movement, and we say something is involuntary because the brain is not in control. The brain did not make a decision. So you have to include that. The brain is not involved here. The spinal cord takes care of everything. The message comes in from a sensory neuron, passes in the spinal cord through an interneuron to a motor neuron. What does the motor neuron do? What do motor neurons do? They make muscles contract. Muscles and glands contract and relax, right? So if you touch something hot, and remember, use an example if it's easier for you. You touch something hot, the heat is sent through sensory receptors to the spinal cord. The message is passed through the interneuron to the motor neuron so that you do what? Which muscles need to move here? The arm muscles, alright? So you move your arm along. That's the reflex and pain arc. Fight or flight response, alright? If I ask you what it is, what I'm looking for in this particular question is the role that the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems provide here. What changes do they make in the body? What does the sympathetic nervous system do? What does the parasympathetic nervous system do? You get more points if you use words like antagonism. Right? They have an antagonistic relationship. One does the reverse of the other. Right? So explain what changes happen in the body. You can't just say the fight or flight response, is a survival mechanism. Yes, that's what it is, but how does it work? Right? How does it happen? And 5. And a lot of people lose points in 5, even though it's really easy. What happens when you sever your spinal cord? To sever is to cut, right, or to damage your spinal cord.
It depends on
There are two things that happen, all right? You sever your spinal cord, and depending on where you severed it, you're going to lose two things in certain parts of the body, all right? Here's what the important part is. Remember that the spinal cord does what? What is its main job? Send messages to and from the brain and the rest of the body. So if you don't have that connection, the brain does not know what is going on in the rest of the body. So you cannot do what? You cannot feel. You can't feel pain, you can't feel pleasure anymore. If somebody tickles you in those parts of the body, your brain has no connection to them anymore. They can't process that, right? And your brain can also not do what? You said it.
Control.
Move.
Voluntary movement is lost. All right? You decide I want to walk across the room. Can't do that anymore because your brain is not connected to those parts of the body. So it cannot send that message. Remember, the spinal cord is the connection between the brain and the rest of the body. When it is lost, we lose two things. What are they? I just said them, people, please.
Pain and pleasure.
Voluntary movement and sensations of pain and pleasure. There's your study guide. If you don't do well on this part of the test, I will kill you all.